Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. I'm your humble host, David Null, also known as Hawkeye Two Feathers, which is my shaman name. I greet you all with the love and the honor and the deepest respect that you deserve, with the honor and the blessings of the great Creator and from Source. And I thank every one of you who stops by and watches, listens to my videos. You and I and the rest of the world are what are changing the world. Now, I'm listening to myself and I'm thinking, wow, gee whiz, Dave, you sound awful somber. Well, just in a contemplative mood. In the last 10 hours, we've gotten some really high Schumann resonance come in. What's interesting is it's the harmonics versus um, how spiky the energy gets, which has been literally off the charts this in the last 24 hours. But it's the harmonics that I've been keeping an eye on as well, not just the spikes. And Mother Earth is really getting some updates. And if it's showing up all over the board, and I mean, consistently for like a whole day, and then it drops off into the background, but it's still there. So it's going to be interesting to see how we kind of feather out around this Schumann resonance thing. Anyway, this video isn't about that. It's about Franz Kafka. Now, as I posted in the chat room at the top, just a little bit of information. Now, I went to Catholic school all my life in Tampa, Florida, Most Total Redeemer, elementary, and then Tampa Catholic. And I graduated in 1970. And one of the things I have to thank the, well, I don't know if I should thank the Catholic Church, but but I absolutely respect the education that was given to us by the nuns and the teachers at those two particular Catholic schools. Back then they really cared that we learned. And sometimes it was a wooden ruler with a steel edge in the palm of your hand, which I was always getting for talking out of class. But one of the things they taught us was to be broad-minded. Interesting that, Catholic, teachings would try to teach broad-mindedness. But they did so by exposing exposing themselves to us. Well, that's another story, but sorry. Little wow, a lot of noise outside for here in the country. Anyway, they exposed us to literature and art and public speaking and sports and basketball and the track team I was on. We still hold actually several records in track. But anyway, at Tampa Catholic and through the teachers and the nuns there that I've spoke about, Sister Helene, and all of the things and many of her they weren't prophecies, they were true, but they were prophetic in that they were new to me, old news to her, and they're coming true now with the Vatican and the priests and so forth. So this isn't about that either. But what is important, though, that I ran across Franz Kafka. I read him back in high school, like in 1968. At least it was 69. And I read some of his short stories and things, and I was like, who is this guy? Well, now he was born in 1883 and died in 1924. And when I was brought up this information last night, just checking things myself, when did he say this? I ran across this one particular website, and I'm going to I can't share the screen with this version of my Chromebook and this thing with YouTube. So I'm going to send you the link where the quotes are, and you can follow along with me and see what I'm talking about, and then read more for yourself, because this isn't particularly how do I put this? This isn't a book review about Franz Kafka. This isn't a life, we're going to read his biography, but it is important to know, where he was and so forth. And so he was in Austria, which meant he was affected by World War One, because if he died in 24, that was just what, 7 years or so after World War One. And World War One, if you've ever done any research into World War One, what both sides went through in the trenches, just I'm sorry, it's beyond horrifying. They use mustard gas. Oh my God, the things they did back then. Now, with that said, so Franz Kafka, he was some of these writings then, well, obviously for the war. And wait, let me send this link. I got back to talking and I wanted to send the link. There it is. It's www.azquotes.com, author, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so if that link, if it doesn't work as a link, you at least got the www.az quotes. So, but let me read there. As I was going through some of these things, I was reflecting with a friend of mine last night, and this Franz had come up before and a couple of other things. And I was like, let me just do a little bit of background check for myself. Not necessarily to do a video about it. I'm always doing research, and it's like, something just seemed to be that I'm led a lot of times by just inspiration. Check this out, and it's like, okay, and then you find things in what you didn't know you were searching for, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh my God. I remember reading some of this when I was, a kid, of like 16 years old. And I realized that reading Kafka and some of the Hermann Hesse and some other folks, it must have at some level, at least in myself, a resonance with the words and with the feelings that I got from the authors and the words that they wrote. And many times, in order to make sense of what some writers will write, being a storyteller and an orator and a public speaker for many, many, many years, and I obviously am still in that, I realized a long time ago, if I read it aloud, I can hear the resonance of what the words meant to the author. It gives me a sense of what the author sounded like, not just wrote. And so anyway, so some of this stuff is like really, really deep, and some of his stuff, when you read it, quite frankly, it's creepy. All right. Now, for one, here's a quote, and he says, "It's only because of their stupidity that they're able to be so sure of themselves." I'll read it again. It's only because of their stupidity that they are able to be so sure of themselves. So okay, you say, well, Hawkeye, what does that mean? It means that it was before World War One. It means that there were all these things going on, and that they're able to be so sure of themselves. Who are they? It's the same they we're talking about right now. The deep state, the dark side, the cabal, wherever you want to go with that. This is what Franz is talking about. I'll read it one more time and keep that in mind. And back in the in the early 1900s, these rich guys and everybody were getting together to rule the world, to set up where we are 100 years later. So let me read the quote again. It's only because of their stupidity that they're able to be so sure of themselves. So they keep going on with this, and they think right now for example, that we don't know what's going on. And that makes them stupid because they're so sure of themselves and that their plan is going to win. And we all know it's not being like that at all. Now, here's another short quote from Kafka. He states, "Start with what is right rather than what is acceptable." Holy crap, in my opinion. What did you say? Start with what is right rather than what is acceptable. Now, in this truth era that we're speaking of now, we are all understanding that. Even my channel and what I'm talking about, I'm bringing up Kafka because 100 years ago, they were in a similar state of unrest, craziness. Electricity was going around. People were driving in cars. And, when he was born, they weren't. Everything was horses and buggies. And so in his lifetime, he went from candles to electricity. And with that electricity also came automobiles. And even by the time he died, he saw airplanes. So in his short period of time, he saw things like I have, being born in 1952. We had just come out of the prop airplane, and now we were flying around in jets. So I was born at the beginning of the jet age, so to speak. And also into outer space with rocketry and things. And I grew up with a black and white television set, and now you can watch TV on your cell phone, live, in color, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? And so it's like, so even in my lifetime, I've seen these jumps in reality, in technology. But what is absolutely astounding to me that 100 years ago, Kafka, they were still faced with the same moral dilemmas, the same kind of issues in politics, whether it was now or then. The heart is what was still the same. Another quote, he says, "I cannot make you understand. I cannot make anyone understand what is happening inside me. I cannot even explain it to myself." No, on my channel and other channels like mine, I'm always talking about, the transition. Some people call it the ascension. Other people might call it the rapture, but whatever it is, higher vibrations. And so many times in my videos and with other people, we're trying to explain to you our soul journeys, how we got here, and my story is my story. I can't tell someone else's. And so in that respect, I'm having to be narcissistic because the story is about my story, but it's not about me. And it's a hard thing to do, to keep ego out of talking about yourself. It's very difficult. And so, but it's important that our stories be told, not just mine, so we can understand with each other. Oh my goodness, you can't explain what's going on inside you again. So let me read this quote again, please. Franz says, "I cannot make you understand. I cannot make anyone understand what is happening inside me. I cannot even explain it to myself." So many of us with these new vibrations, that's why I brought up the Schumann resonance at the beginning of this program, in that there were things going on that people with empathy and feelings and, artists and writers and things 100 years ago were feeling what we're feeling now. Maybe this is a deja vu kind of instance or something. I look at some of these writings and I'm thinking to myself, somebody wrote something like just the other day, not the same way, but I have even spoke kind of sort of to myself, like, I have these feelings and I'm going to do my best to try to explain them to you. And then yesterday I read these and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I need to share some of these quotes with you from Franz Kafka. Now, because I read him as a teenager, literally 16, maybe 17, And later on, now I can't remember all the stories and everything. It's been a long time, and I've had a lot of brain damage. But I understand what Franz was talking about, and I must have somehow still have these feelings from what I read all these years ago. So, up to you. But if you're trying to seek a higher knowledge, there are people 100 years ago who wrote things, and they stimulate my spirit. Like, oh my God, I'll read this again, just because it's like, I cannot make you understand. I cannot make anyone understand what is happening inside me. I cannot even explain it to myself. Now, I'm reading this off of AZ quotes. Okay. I'm just down the page a little bit if you're trying to follow along. Now, I can't see the chat because I'm on another screen. So, but I'm just going to stay here. Now, this is sort of long winded, but it has to do about fear. And I'm going to kind of read I'm going to take little excerpts out of this paragraph, because there are only two sentences, and they're run-on sentences. He uses commas as separators, which a lot of writers did back in them days. It's one of the things that Mark Twain or Samuel Clemens didn't do. He wrote in a better style. He used a period. He stopped sentences, but this second sentence here is basically a run-on sentence. But he talks about fear. Fear spread to everything. Fear of the greatest as of the smallest. In other words, you could be afraid of being a great athlete, or you could be afraid of being the worst athlete. So fear of the greatest and the smallest. Fear paralyzing fear of pronouncing a word, just one word, being afraid to say a word. So anyway, let me start from the top. So he says, I am constantly trying to communicate something incommunicable, to explain something inexplicable, to tell about something I only feel in my bones, and which can only be experienced in those bones. Basically, it is nothing other than this fear we have so often talked about. But fear spread to everything. Fear the greatest as of the smallest. Fear, paralyzing fear of pronouncing a word. Although this fear may not only be fear, but also a longing for something greater than all that is fearful. I know that's a little tongue twistering in there, but the idea is, and I've talked about fear before, and it just like, oh my God, 100 years ago, and that fear paralyzes us. Fear of being great, fear of not being great enough, and but in this last part, he says, but not only be fear, but also a longing for something greater within us that is fearful in itself. So in other words, some people will fear to practice to be a better spiritual being because they may fail. So, well, I don't know if I'm meditating right. Well, I don't know if I should do this. Well, why should I do it? It's a bunch of hogwash hooey. And so somehow internally, well, I'm not going to accept Jesus. Whatever there are these fears, and that fear in itself is fearful, but the fear may actually explain something that's even deeper than just fear itself, like the cause of the fear. So why am I talking about Franz Kafka now in this? Because he was on a soul journey, just like many of us. And Understand, I'm not trying to put any religious books down, but sometimes we can find spirituality in the writings of other people. Sometimes we can find the Christ consciousness with someone who never mentions it. Sometimes we find things that will lift up our heart and spirit from something that was written 200, 300,000 years ago. Okay, I'll throw in the Bible. Is everything that Franz Kafka wrote, well, like, should I follow him around and do he? No, but he had insight with, he was trying to explain what was going on within his own spiritual revolution. And he says, to tell about something I only feel in my bones and which can only be experienced in those bones. In other words, you could say, well, Hawk, I understand how you are. Well, no, not quite. And I'm not trying to be derogatory. Um, but it's unless you walk a mile in another man's shoes. That's what he's talking about. Feel in my bones, in my shoes, which can only be experienced if you choose to be in my bones, if you walk in my shoes. So it's like, this is what he's talking about. So 100 years ago, folks are having, if not the same, but very similar types of feelings, reactions to the world around them. And here's Franz talking about fear. I'm moving on to another quote, but this is why I thought it was interesting that I should bring up some of his quotes. Here's a really good short one. They say ignorance is bliss. ... They're wrong. How about that one? Very simple, but it stimulates my mind to think, oh yeah, the ignorance about politics. Well, so if they lie to us about what uh, politicians actually do or what the law is supposed to be, if we don't know it, that's being ignorant. Then they can get away with whatever they want. And so when he says they say ignorance is bliss, ... They're wrong. I think, wow, not just in politics, but in science, in industry. Oh, wait. 100 years ago, more or less. Well, yeah, more or less. Now here's one, and I've been talking about the red road and being on the correct path. And this quote says, paths are made by walking. Now, I talk about we are walking the path to enlightenment. Well, what if there is no path? What if you just have to forge ahead on your own? What if nothing that you read or whatever quite resonates with you, but you follow your own heart and your own instinct? So Franz, being the writer that he was, in other words, trying to put forth a different consciousness within the world 100 years ago, which was, pre World War I, and he died after the war. But so he was witness to a lot of atrocities, whether he was actually there, but in the newspaper and people coming back from war and the whole idea. So he says, paths are made by walking. And that's what many of us are doing. We're trying to find a path. Well, what if in looking for a path that may not actually be the real path we need to be on, maybe what we should do is start the walk. Head in the direction that everybody else seems to be heading in with spirituality. I want to be a good person, honorable, I want to follow the one rule, do no harm to any being. So you're already on the path. But what if the way how you get there is different from everybody else? So maybe you should start walking and the path will become clear. That's what Franz is saying. 100 years ago. Just saying. Here's another really nice, good short one. Do not waste your time looking for an obstacle. Maybe there is none. I know there are times when I think, whoa, I have wasted so much time worrying about whether or not something was going to be an obstacle to me, whether in speech, writing, work, whatever. Oh, crap. I don't know if I can get there. And I worry so much about what if something happened that there was nothing there. My mind, my fear, which I quoted him up a few quotes. So maybe my fear kept me from doing something because I perceived there may be an obstacle there. When maybe, as Franz says, maybe there is none. So now you look at it from a writer's point of view. You get writer's block and this like that. And you say, well, I just can't think of anything to write. And the first thing a writer will do is, oh, I got writer's block. The obstacle of blah, blah, blah. And maybe there is no uh, obstacle to keep you from writing or doing what you want to do. Maybe it's that you dream it up yourself. And that's the same thing. Now I'm using this not necessarily only for, but use it in, we're all trying to attain a spiritual awakeness. Now, this is the one, these two just literally, I just sat here and looked at the screen and went, holy crap. Now I'm on the www.azquotes.com. Okay, and it's Franz Kafka, as in the top of the thingy. I still can't see y'all's chat, so I'm going to keep on with this, and then I'm going to come over to the chat room. I don't know which one of these to read first, but I'm going to do it as they have them listed. Okay, here we go. Franz Kafka, 100 years ago, says, "We live in an age which is so possessed by demons that soon we shall only be able to do goodness and justice in the deepest secrecy, as if it were a crime." What? Think about all the YouTube channels, for example, who are putting out, trying to do good in things or justice, and that now they were kicked off of YouTube. And now, not all the ones that were kicked off of YouTube did. Some of them should have. But again, and that's just my humble opinion. In my humble opinion, everybody's got the right without pointing the gun and going, if you come, I'm going to go to. No. There were a couple of guys who done that, brandishing their weapons on screen, and I'm like, why don't you just say, I have a weapon, I know how to use it, and if I need to, I will. But no, they had to brandish it. Nah, come on. So, did they actually threaten anybody in some of these channels that have been taken down now for a while? No. But somebody got pissed because they were waving a gun. Okay. But to the point, though, these people are patriots and they want to get rid of the demons in our justice system, which isn't justice for us at all. And dang sure ain't justice for them. They don't get, we don't get our justice. Of course, you could look at it and say, well, their justice is that we don't operate on the same page as they do. As soon as you walk into a courtroom, you've lost all your rights. As soon as you speak to the judge, you're in their jurisdiction now. And I've been in jail several times. I spent a year in jail. I've seen the system from the inside, and it sucks. But let me read this again. We live in an age which is so possessed by demons that soon we shall only be able to do goodness and justice in the deepest secrecy, as if it were a crime. So people are passing like, wow, did you hear? Okay, you can say the Q thing. It's like, you can't, there's no news channel that will cover the things that the Q drops and everything, other things that happen through different YouTube channels and different medias and so forth. And so 100 years ago, Franz Kafka lived through the same thing. Goodness and justice could only be conducted in the deepest secrecy, as if it were a crime. Aren't we living that now? Blew me away. I mean, I've read, like I said, I've read his work as a 16, 17-year-old in high school, and some things since then. But I've had such many headbangs. I can only recall one story, and I can't even recall the name of it. So, but do your own checking about Franz Kafka, and you can go to the local library and check out a book of his collected works. Usually, so you don't have to buy anything. Just go to the library. Now, this next little quote is interesting. He states simply, "You can choose to be free, but it's the last decision you'll ever make." What? You can choose to be free, but it's the last decision you'll ever make. Wait a minute. Does that make any sense? Oh, yeah. Because once you choose to be free, then it's like decisions aren't somebody's not making the decisions for you. Well, I can't go to work today. I'd really like to go fishing. No, I gotta go, not to go. Well, I'm a free man. Oh, no, you're not. You're tied to a desk, a chair, a job. I mean, no. Even me is on Social Security. I'm tied to my house because they only give me enough money to subsist for a short time, and I'm dependent on that check every month. And I don't even have enough money to fix my truck. This isn't a bitch. But it is my reality. I don't have enough money to get my truck fixed, and I don't have enough money to do this. I can't even travel because blah blah blah. But it's an economics thing, so they can say, "Well, aren't you retired now, Hawkeye?" Well, yeah. Well, then you're free to do what you want. No, I'm not, because it's all these other circumstances. I'm, now, but understand that I can choose to be free, but it's the last decision I'll make. Because if I want to be free of the government, then that means I don't get a check once a month. If I want to be free from this, but at the same time, I will just be a human being. There's a lot of that one sentence has a lot of depth, but I just want to go on. Next quote. If the literature we are reading does not wake us, then why do we read it? A literary work must be an ice axe to break the sea frozen inside of us. In other words, now see, I've been making statements, and I still stand by this. Watch what's being written. I can't even watch some of these news programs anymore. It's like, oh God, what they say it literally grates on my nerves. And the frequency is so wrong. Just the words and how it's just, woo, it hurts. And it's not so much the words themselves, but it's the combination. Wow, it hurts. Anyway, and we know what many of us are talking about. We don't watch, I used to watch local news, and sometimes that's even hard to watch. But anyway, but a literary work must be an ice axe to break the sea frozen inside us. In other words, to break us free of our restrictions. And so many of us we may not be writing, but we're doing visual blogs like this one. We're doing videos, and we're talking about these things. And I could go back in and shoot with just the last year. I've got enough information to write 3 books, but it's more about the information than it is about the work itself and the publishing and all that. But to the point, though. But if we don't talk about something that will shake you up inside, then how can you realize the greaterness inside of each of us, how great our spirits can be, how high we can fly as angels? It's just, so this next quote is, "I am free, and that is why I am lost." Meaning you're just free to let your mind go wandering around. And in that sense, I absolutely agree. But And I can understand where when you just let your mind wander and there's no outside force making you or stopping you from thinking without any box, or that the spider web of the universe and the things that I speak about that are in a lot of ways to many people is just very woo woo. But when you look at it from what the ancient shamans have taught, it's not woo woo at all. It's woo woo because we put our current science on it. Our current science explains some of these ancient traditions of true shamanism and that core value you always hear me talk about. That core value is that core value of the source and of all the ancient progenitors that built this planet. It was later taken over, and those ancients, some of them guys were the bad dudes. So, I keep making that statement to make sure, because people will type in ancient ones, and the first three or four hits you'll get, they're all bad guys. Now those were the recent ancients. There are more ancient ancients. Anyway, for another discussion, just want to bring it up that you got to understand there's a lot more to a lot of these stories than they've been telling us. Here we go with this one. The truth is always an abyss. One must, as in a swimming pool. How many times have I talked about swimming pools and the diving boards? So, anyway, one must, as in a swimming pool, dare to dive from the quivering springboard of trivial everyday experience and sink into the depths in order to later rise again, laughing and fighting for breath, to the now doubly illuminated surface of things. Whoa, what? So he uses diving into a pool. So if you're diving looking for truth, and we all talk about the rabbit hole, so he's saying he's using the word abyss instead of rabbit hole. And he's saying one must, as in a swimming pool, dare to dive from that quivering springboard of trivial everyday experience and sink into the depths. In other words, going down that rabbit hole in order to later rise again, coming out of that rabbit hole and back up, laughing and fighting for breath to the now doubly illuminated surface of things. In other words, when you dive below the surface and you come back up, the surface of the water looks different than before you dove in. Now, again, this is 100 years ago. And why am I bringing up Franz Kafka? Because I just thought that some of his insights from 100 years ago sound like somebody wrote them day before yesterday. I mean, what? It's still valid. And in a way, now I didn't grow up back then, but I've studied the turn of the century and so forth. And, it might have been cool up to a point, but mud streets and horse crap and, people throwing, raw sewage out. Yeah. Oh, man, not me. But anyway, I got two more that I want to read, and then I'm going to switch the screens back and look at your comments if anybody's still there. He says, I usually solve problems by letting them devour me. What? I'll read it again. I usually solve problems by letting them devour me. You want the problem to devour you, to eat you? So that, well, if you let the problem, if it's a problem to devour you, doesn't that mean that you're going to fail or it's going to eat you alive and you're not going to? No, he says, I usually solve problems by letting them devour me. So the problem may devour him, but he finds a solution. What? There's an old Confucius saying or something like that. It may not have been just Confucius, and I don't have the correct wording, but it goes something like this. And it had to do with business and in making decisions in general. If you have to make an important decision, Take that decision and eat it before you go to bed. If you wake up in the morning with a stomach ache, you will know your answer. What? So, ancient writings, thousands of years ago, spoke about if you've got a problem, take it and devour it into yourself. Let it sit overnight and cook. And then when you wake up, say, stomach ache. And what does that equate to? Following your gut feeling, whether it's good or bad. So, man, something ain't good about this. Follow your gut. Well, then don't do it. I know in my lifetime there were several times if I had listened to my stomach, if I had listened to my gut, I wouldn't have gotten busted in Tampa. But that's another story. So in essence, he's just kind of reworded what the old Chinese masters wrote about, allowing the problem to devour you, and that's how you find the solution. If you eat that problem and try to digest it, and then if it gives you indigestion, you know it's the wrong decision. Follow your gut. 100 years ago. Now Confucius was thousands of years, but anyway. And I just thought this was interesting because as I get older, I'm like, Now, he wasn't really an old man when he died, and he died on the third of the month. He was born on the third of a month, almost 1 month, away from whatever birthday it was. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting. So here's the last quote I'm going to read now. He says, anybody who preserves the ability to recognize beauty will never get old. I'll read it again. Anybody who preserves the ability to recognize beauty will never get old. Now, what could that mean? Well, it means for me that as I've gotten older, our eyes can be jaded by the world. We could say, well, I'm in the last years of my life. I'm in the decline of my life. What do I have to look forward to? I mean, and then there are people who get to be 65 and say, yippee, I get to go do stuff. Yay. And it's almost like they're reborn again because now they're not tied down by certain things. And both are true. And there are some people who, after they become seniors, I guess, will sometimes like over medicate, whether it be alcohol or eating or lots of other things, because it's like, well, I know I don't have long to live. I'm 65 now, and well, I better get it in while I can. Well, that might not necessarily be the right idea, but to the idea of, okay, let's experience life, but let's do it, with a little bit of sense. But anyway, but some people get jaded. So he's saying anybody who preserves the ability, in other words, that your judgment isn't clouded, to recognize beauty will never get old. So the beauty in a tree, the beauty in a leaf, the beauty in a sunset, the beauty, if it's like, it's just another sunset. It's just, as a young man, I'm still a romantic at heart, but to the point that when I'm young and vibrant and testosterone filled, I'm like, oh, the way, and I still feel that way. It's just 66 years later or 55 years later, you know what I mean, 50 years later. But with that said, though, to have the ability to preserve and recognize beauty. So if you ever lose that, oldness is just going to gobble you up. And I've seen that in people my age and older than me and so forth. And it's like, that's a lot more true than not. Okay. Now I'm back to the other screen. Hi, everybody. Pamela, Lori, Supernatural, Pamela, iStation Z, Hi there, hi there, hi there, hi there, hi there. And prayers for everybody. And so what really got me though is that I got to go back to the other page. So I see everybody down there, and blessings to you all every time. And I hope you know I really do mean what I say, and the way I feel. But this is the one, and I'm going to read it again because it just is like, oh my God, 100 years ago, this is what was going on. And Franz states, we live in an age which is so possessed by demons that soon we shall only be able to do goodness and justice in the deepest secrecy, as if it were a crime. And you all, I know, here in the chat room at the morning. Hello, Lori. How are you? Pamela, I Station. And okay, Melanie. Yes. So I mean, for Franz to have had that insight 100 years ago, and I don't know. I'm always going through the news and searching and seeing what's going on, and whether or not there's any particular topic that needs to be talked about, for example, or whatever, or maybe spirit gives me a message to say, hey, let's have a conversation about this. But reading this about Franz, I was like, oh my God, 100 years ago. I mean, so this underground secrecy of the truth, and that 100 years ago they had to go down rabbit holes to find out what the truth was. And the writers and folks were, free thinkers have always been targets. And Franz was a target. Now, I remember way back, and I know that Franz had, he would attend literary, rub elbows with other writers, and I can't remember those, but I want to say at one time that Franz Kafka and Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein, used to, have coffee, tea, and discuss things. Now I can't. I that may be a distant memory, and maybe it was a different writer. But my point to this is that writers back in the day, they just found each other because there was no telephones and things. They couldn't call them up for ideas and, well, what do you think about this? And writing and writing techniques and what is literature all about. So, they got together in coffee bars. If somebody traveled from America to Paris, they might run into this guy, that guy, person or lady, many women writers as well. But to the point, though, so they rubbed elbows with each other and talked about these things. And in their realm of society, they didn't have the internet, but they were a closed group by definition because no one really wanted to listen to what they were saying. And that's why Franz was saying, um, always go for the truth, not for what's popular or currently acceptable. You got to speak the truth. And that's why sometimes, I got called a heretic because there are things that people really don't understand. You need to expand your thoughts on some things. And it's just absolutely going to tick some people off. Franz says, like using an ice pick on the frozen sea that's inside of you. Now, that's, to me, that's like a really violent way of like trying to get to the core of something. But okay, I would rather say it'd be like cracking a walnut or something, crunch. But even that, I guess, is violent. But an ice pick to the sea, a frozen sea inside of us, inside our soul. That's an interesting way of looking at it, the sea of emotion that each one of us has. So it's like, and I guess one of the reasons why I brought up Franz is because there are some other interesting stories out there. And if this, pops your interest at all, piques your interest, then by all means, check out Franz. Check out some more of his quotes. Golly, I realize this has almost been an hour. And seeing, I thought I could get by with like maybe 45 minutes, but I didn't even read all the quotes. I read those that I thought were most important. about what's going on right now. I mean, even with the UFO community and things, I mean, there's stuff going on and truths and, you got to dive down deep the rabbit hole. And at some point, you got to come back up for air if you use the pool scenario, which I'm always talking about, diving off the deep end. No, we got to go into the kiddie pool first and get our feet wet and learn how to paddle around before we go jump off the 10-foot diving board into the deep section, and he, consequently enough, 100 years ago, he used the pool as a similar metaphor. Wow. Now, I don't know if I read that when I read him at the age of 16, which would be, a long time ago, 50 years ago. But using the analogy of the pool and diving and the depths and the thing, and, wow. So I'm not the only one that uses these types of visualizations. I find it interesting that some of the things that I have discussed are eerily very true to what, I've used a couple of different words, but I'm almost like speaking Kafka-esque myself. Somebody wrote that up there I saw earlier. But anyway, so I just thought I would bring this to y'all's attention. And that it seems to me that the secrecy is coming to light. It seems to me that a lot of us have dove down to the bottom of the pool, and we're now pushing back up, and we're breaking the surface into 2019. Because now we've already been to the bottom. We've seen all the nasty stuff. And as we come up, though, there are bubbles and things. There's a lot of metaphors you could use with water. It's cleansing. It's, it's energetic. Water in itself is energy. A lot of the monoliths and things around the planet are built around water because they use the water energy. And so, but anyway, and so if we use that as a metaphor, as I've been using water in a swimming pool, etc., the water in itself is very symbolic. And it's so that, okay, everybody, in 2017 and 2018, we all dove to the depths. Now, we can't stay on the bottom because we'll frickin' drown. We've got to push up from the bottom. If you've ever dove into the bottom of a swimming pool, push off from the bottom so we can break free onto the surface. So we can look around and go, wow, it looks a lot different from up here. But, at water level, I viewed it from the top of the diving board, and that looks different. I viewed it from the bottom of the pool looking up as I came back up for air. Now I can breathe again. My ears didn't pop because it was 15 feet deep. I don't have water in my eyes, and I can breathe again. And whoo! But when you look at the water from here, it looks totally different. It doesn't mean that you're drowning or whatever. But so there's 3 different perspectives or more just in that analogy. So, but I feel like the community, the truth. Thank you very much, Super. I think that, over the last couple of years, we've all been doing deep diving and we're all out of breath. We haven't developed gills yet. And so, we can't breathe underwater. We can't stay down that long. And for some of us, we've been down so long, it looks like up to me, which was a book, I think, by Bob Hope. I'm not sure. It was way back in the 60s or 70s. So the idea is, though, that once we have broken free of this, thank you, Super, that now we can all take a deep breath. Now it's time just to tread water and go, wow, I've been to the bottom and back, Now, in my younger days, I scuba dived, did a lot of snorkeling and things like that. And so, going down and holding your breath and being down for 2 minutes and then coming back up. And it's like, most people can't hold their breath for a minute. And I had gotten up to a little over 2 minutes back in the day, simply because I was trying to do free diving and things like that. And, but it takes a lot of control, a lot of breath, a lot of mental, and the thing is like people say, well, you can't hold your breath for 2 or 3 minutes. Oh yeah, you can, with just practice, and it's all about staying calm and, but anyway, the different story. But To the point, though, there are so many water analogies if you really go into different things like holding your breath and swimming and scoobing and, anyway. But for most of us, and one of the things that I think is similar right now is the yellow vest thing. And now that, well, if you wear a yellow vest in America, folks are going to want to arrest you now or some shit. I mean, it's like, what? Makes me want to wear one just to piss them off. Whether I'm on that side or not, makes me just want to put on a yellow vest and go, that's just dumb. But what it represents is a threat. And what the yellow vest is across the world is us coming up from the depths of the pool, if you will, and we're breaking free. And we're all saying, every single one of us, I am tired of this. Whether it's England against France, they don't care. What they have in common is that they're tired of the crap. What France is going through and what we, experience down here in South Georgia isn't the same. But am I tired of the same crap that those folks have to put up with over there? Absolutely, because I got it here and I have to deal with it. And it's like, and that's just not me, but pick a spot. Everybody's got some kind of turmoil, and it's got to do with the local, quote, authorities. And it's like, and we're tired of it. We have been down so long, humanity. And it's time we just pop up out of the bottom of the pool. And, now I'm not, for some of us, we're strong swimmers, if you will. And we can start off with a side stroke and head to the side or whatever, you pick a spot, to get out of the water. Or there are some folks who like it underwater and will come up for air and then go back down to find more information into the depths, which is fine if that's what you choose. But understand, so many times going up and down, you're eventually going to tire yourself out by the dive itself and staying down. So all of us have got to come up for air. And I think right now people are coming up for air with the knowledge that they have, brought back from the rabbit hole, if you will. Everybody's poking their head out in 2019 going, yeah, and you know what? Most of us know this stuff. And 2 years ago, some of what we're talking about now was just simply speculation. And now we've got hard facts to back up what was speculation then. And so it's like, well, wait a minute. So we have been on a deep dive. Now, what does that mean by that? I don't know. I just know that I feel like that. I feel like I've just been underwater for so long, to continue using the metaphor, and I'm breaking forth out of the depths and whew, deep breath. Wow, I can breathe again. Whoa, and the sky. Oh, wow. While I was down there, wow, the sun came out or something. I mean, use your own imagination with that. But I think you get my drift with what I mean by that. So I want to continue with 2019, and I'm going to do a separate video, maybe tonight or surely coming up, about speaking in the positive. And last night I watched not quite all of Trump's speech, but I noticed that he was speaking in the positive. He was doing what I've been trying to explain to everybody. And I'll just give you a little taste of it. When he said, there is a solution to this. It's called a 45-minute meeting. And, it's like, well, wait a minute, how do you back out of that? And say, well, I don't know. He says he got a solution. He discussed his compromise before he mentioned the meeting. But my point about this, he spoke in the positive. And it's very difficult for the other side, for anybody on the other side. I don't mean Democrat, just necessarily a Democrat, but anybody who wants to like poo-pooing. But some of the things he did in his speech last night, he was speaking in the positive. Whoops. That's what I've been talking about at least for 2 years now on this channel at different times. And I need to bring it up again because it's very important. How we speak to AI, how we speak to each other, how we respond, how we keep out of how we stay out of the chaos, and we keep the positive going with we need to keep our awareness of all things crazy, and we need to, share it with each other. But we got to stop with this panic. And the recent thing that an asteroid went by with a moon beside it, and I'm like, what? Are you sure that was a little moon beside it? Anyway, was that really an asteroid? It was too round. But I'm just saying, But there are interesting things. People taking pictures of blue beams all over the planet, over in Europe, around Jordan, in Israel, and over sacred places. There are things going on, and by us coming out of the depths of the water, all of us are seeing the world. A little bit of water in our eyes, where you get that kind of little bit of cloudiness for a second until your eyes clear up, especially if you're in a chlorine pool. But in that we will all see clearly now a lot more things. And this coming year, I'm going to continue having this conversation with folks. And I humbly pray that it won't be preachy, but at the same time, it needs to be repeated. So, folks, we need to pound this in. Well, pounding is necessarily not a good thought, but emphasize how important it is for us to speak in the positive from this point forward. And as we learn these things, as we all have this information from being at the bottom of the pool, we can now go, you know what? We all have something in common. We've been to the bottom of the pool. Now, I was at the bottom of the pool over here, and I found a nickel. Somebody was at the bottom of a pool on the other side of the world, and they found a penny. One has one worth and one has another, but somebody found something at the bottom of the pool. Anyway, they're both valuable to the person who found it in some way, shape, or form, if not only in the fact that they found it at the bottom of the pool. But anyway, so this 2019 will be in the sharing, and that, as in speaking about shamans, any one of you folk out there who are looking to be a higher spiritual being is at least a shaman in training, at least. And I say that with confidence because not everybody's called to it. And if you've been called to service for the cause, if you know what that means, then you're in service of the cause. And if you're in service of the cause, then your service is so much greater than your family, yourself, America, or Europe, wherever you're at, or the planet. It at least extends with our entire solar system. And it has everything to do with the Christ consciousness and the Buddha consciousness, our spiritual awareness. We need to stop with the petty differences and continue to focus on the core. I know I'm repeating myself some more, but it's that core value, which is the very ancient shaman core. And all y'all have it because you wouldn't be here. And you go to different channels and hang out in the chats. You're seeking information. You're still diving. That's okay. But some folks won't come up for air. Then I'm not going to mention any names because they keep revisiting the same thing. It's like, okay, I've got enough information on the Nephilim. And how much more are you going to tell me that it's like I'm going to listen to 99% of the same stuff just reworded and rehashed when all I really need to know is the Nephilim were alive in those days? Okay, moving on. But to continue doing videos over 5, 6, 7 years on the same damn subject, to me, is just trying to beat a dead horse, as the old saying goes. You can't make it get up if it's dead. And I'm saying, let's look more forward. Yes, there are things in the background. Yes, but y'all ain't giving me new information. You're giving me new speculation. But okay, fine. But let's look forward to other things. How do we solve this? How do we work on it? Well, the Nephilim and they're, Enoch and all that, they're the blame for this. Okay, let's move on. How do we fix this? How do you, me, and the next guy, how do we band together with this core value and move forward to manifest 2019? If you look up the word manifest, it is to make clear, to make obvious. And every one of us want to make our intentions obvious and clear this coming year. So let's all work together on that. Speak in the positive. Stop being nanny boo boo and, reacting to things that really don't matter. And when you do react to things, try to use the positive. Put that positive spin on it, like Trump did last night in his speech. You guys were for the wall until I got elected. And that's absolutely true. There's lots of interviews out there that show these guys going, yeah, and Chucky Schumer was one of them. So now, but they're all they stopped the government because now they don't like Trump. And that's exactly true. But he stated a fact, which is in itself a positive mode versus you guys, he didn't go there. He just said, you guys were all for the wall until I got elected, which is a true statement. And then he said, and we can resolve this with a 45-minute meeting. That's speaking in the positive. He gave an ultimatum, if you will, and they've rejected. And it's like, now who looks like the butthole in this? Trump or the other guy? He said, come on, I'm waiting. Y'all come on in. 45-minute meeting. That's a positive. He gave a solution. He didn't say what it was, but he said, come to my office and I'm sure we can fix it. And nope. And everybody wants to make Trump's the bad guy. Wait a minute. He extended a bunch of olive leaves. Come on. But it's you guys don't want to do it. So who takes blame? But my point is that he spoke with positive, this person was shot, this person was murdered, this person was decapitated and hacked up. That's not positive, but he's got a solution. That's the positive. We have a solution to this. And if you come to my office, we can settle this in 45 minutes. What? That's speaking in the positive. That's using facts and then following up with, we can have a positive result rather than, well, if you want to fight, I'll just lock down the government. Screw all y'all, I'm right and everybody else is wrong. No, he didn't say anything about himself. He said Homeland Security and the people on the Border Patrol came up with this plan and I agree. So he didn't say it was his plan. It was Homeland Security. That's a positive. He was speaking in the positive. Here are the facts. Now, here's the solution. Let's chat. Now, that's how you, me, and the next guy fix our future. That's exactly what I'm talking about, is what Trump is. I watched it, and it was like, oh, he was lying. He was trying to make a... No, he wasn't. He was being sincere. He went from a presidential mode to arms on the desk and went like this. He got comfortable. And as a public speaker, as a director for many years, and I placed 7th in the nation in 1989 with extemporaneous speaking. I was the gold medal winner for the state of Georgia in 1989 in extemporaneous speaking. I have done these things, okay? And as a director, you have to watch people's reactions and so forth. And I got to say, when he came out of the upright and down into the elbows kind of on the table and leaned down, I was like, oh man, it was an honest move, but it was a slick move because he came out of statistical mode and he went into natural mode. This cop got murdered. This lady was beaten to death, beaten to death with a hammer. But I've got a solution. And he stated it. The Democrats said they don't want concrete. We'll take steel. Now, this is my thing about the concrete. They've got lime, Portland cement, and a crap load of sand down there. Why wouldn't you make the wall out of concrete? Do they have any steel laying around down there? No. So you got to manufacture the steel. Now, which is easier to climb? A slick concrete wall or a manufactured steel fence like you see along the interstates. I could climb one of them even at my age, but I can't climb a slick concrete wall. Now, from my point about this, and I brought it up, so I'm just going to kind of do a little wrap up with this thing about the wall and Trump. But from my point, why concrete? Because of all the freaking sand down there. It's like ready material. Let's use what we have on hand. We don't have to truck anything in except maybe some Portland cement and a couple of train loads. That'll take care of that, But the Mexicans have cement plants on their side. We've got it on our side. Why not use that resource? No, the Democrats want a steel fence. He stated that in his address last night. But do they want to compromise? He already compromised with them when I think the concrete is like a really excellent idea because of the materials down there. But everybody remembers, and I remember the Berlin Wall. I lived during them days, and that it's a concrete wall. Well, a steel fence, concrete wall, it's still a barrier. Let's just put this in perspective. The concrete would be a lot cheaper and easier to manufacture on site, whereas somebody somewhere's got to come up with some steel, and that gets expensive. It rusts, there are things there, and people can climb them. Just saying. Where concrete would be very difficult. Now, and also everybody's requoting this line, and I made this statement in one of my videos a couple of days ago about our southern border. Why wouldn't we protect our southern border? If kids in the neighborhood are running through your backyards, you put up a fence and they don't run through it anymore. They find another direction. I know. I was a kid, and we used to get hollered at because we took shortcuts through people's yards. Get the hell out! When you took it, go around. Blah, blah. Anyway. But so, if whether there was ill intent or not, we were going through other people's backyards as children trying to get to other portions of the neighborhood. So if somebody put up a fence, we had to go the long way around, So doesn't that make sense? And so his statement about, rich people live in a gated community, and it's not to keep the people out. It's, safe from the people on the outside is to keep the people on the inside safe. And there are gated communities all the way around. And it's like, and these same people are going, oh, no, open border. Well, then take down your security fence. Well, then take down your quit using the card to swipe to get into your neighborhood then. If you're all fired, if you want to talk about this, because your backyard is secure, but the entire nation's isn't. Just saying. Doesn't that just sound practical? Without going into some if they're not from America, why should we just let them roam across the border? No. Oh, well, they're immigrants. Yeah, okay. There are channels. There are other ways. You don't have to hop the fence. And they're saying, well, look how bad the United States was. Baby was killed. And wait a minute, hang on. If you're trying to climb a fence to get into anything that's supposed to you're not allowed, anything that happens to you when you touch that fence or beyond, you made a decision. Oh, but it's America's fault. No, it's not. It's the people trying to climb the damn fence. I mean, if prisoners in a prison were trying to get out, if they started climbing the fence, they'd get shot with a bullet and killed. If somebody tried to get into the prison, they would be shot and killed. So the fence thing is protection either way. But to the point that if I went up to a fence in the prison yard, I know damn well and good I'm going to get shot. So the people from the South trying to cross our southern border are somehow, well, no, they did. You know what? You're coming with intent to invade us. You didn't come and knock on the door and say, can I come in? You're going, let me in, damn it. We're going to clobber you, climb the wall, and we're coming, whether you want us in or not. Do we want those kind of people in at all? Just saying. So that's my tirade for that. But there's so many people who's like, let's just use common sense, please. Please? Anyone trying to come across without going through the right channels, we don't want in. We don't. Because if they're willing to break the law to get in, Do you think law means crap to them after they get here? No, they don't. I've met some of these people, South Georgia, and we're coming into cabbage season down here. There's going to be migrant Mexican workers all over the place with the population that's already here that works in the chicken factory. And so it's like, and some of these things have happened here around in South Georgia, where there's a large population of Mexican communities. So, I know about it. I've spoke about it before. I think they should put up a freaking fence. I don't care, use local materials, make it out of brick, make it a Pueblo wall. I don't care. But the thing is we need to think about things differently. Let's look at our core values in this. Do we want people who would steal and rape, murder, kill to get into the country as people we want in our country? It sounds like evil coming into me. I'm all for saving children. I'm all for hungry women and men, but to the point, if you're more worried about climbing a fence than it is going out and finding a job, work, or to do something, or go out in the ocean and fish, for God's sakes, do something, to feed the people rather than, I'm hungry, I'm going to, break into America. We all have choices to make. And these people, in my opinion, are making them the bad choice, and they're trying to make you and me the brunt of the joke, if you will. So when we wrapping this back around to Franz Kafka, when you understand that the people 100 years ago were facing World War One, and none of them knew how nasty it was going to be with the trench warfare, the mustard gas, and all you got to, and if you haven't really watched it, you should see what those men went through, and women on both sides went through because of what their government wanted. I say, let's all put on a yellow vest. I say, whether or not we stand in the street and protest, we put on a yellow vest and you say, I've had enough of this. And in 2019, I'm going to work in a positive way to make these changes. I'm going to have conversations. Let's talk about just being practical. I'm not going to holler at you. If you don't want the fence, fine. But then you obviously don't know what I know or a lot of other people know. And so, but I'm going to pray that you get enlightened over it. I'm not going to argue with you. You jump up and down all you want to. I just stated my case. You can state your case. But I'm going to refuse to get mad at you over it. You're going to be pissed with my opinion, not necessarily you, but the collective you, because I might look at it from a different point of view. So, but don't even the folks. Well, do you want a wall? No. Do you think we should have border security? Well, ICE, they do all these things. Okay, yeah, but they're our border patrol. Yeah, well, do you want murderers and rapists to come into the country? Well, no. Well, that's not a good thing. Well, how do you think you're going to keep them out then? Oh, but yeah, wall and ICE and, Homeland Security, border patrol, but you agree you don't want these people. Yeah, okay. My point is that rather than argue about whether it's a wall or a fence or whatever, let's stick with the idea. Do you want these negative people to be in our backyard? I mean, literally in your backyard, renting a house from someone and they're literally in your backyard. Do you want them there? Well, I don't know. They might not be. You don't have any clue. There's an underground series of folks driving, Mexicans around, and it's like, you really don't know who they might be staying with. They could be 2 blocks away, and that's your backyard. Well, yeah, but you don't know. So, but let's just do the practical thing, and let's be kind about it. Let's be kind to each other about it. We all want security. None of us want to get beat to death with a hammer. None of us want to get killed and cut up into pieces. And that happened in my state. I don't want it. Somebody could come down the road down here and steal me blind. I live by myself. And if 2 or 3 people came in and overpowered me, they could cut me up and throw me in the woods back there. And unless somebody missed me and drove down here a week or 2 or 3 or maybe a month later, they wouldn't even know I was freaking dead. I mean, do I want that in my neighborhood? No. So I want to be practical too. I want that protection. So why not? So but anyway, enough of the wall and that kind of thing. But my point with this is that let's look at it the positive side. Don't we want protection? Let's just stick with that instead of arguing all the other sides of the coin. Just stick with how do you if you want protection, then how do you propose to do it? Don't bring up wall or fence or whatever. Well, it you agree with me that you want protection. Yes. Okay, then how do you propose? And just let them have it. Let them have the subject and try to explain it to you. Because in their mumble jumble, they're going to understand they don't really understand it. Well, but how would you take care of the situation? What? Excuse me? You don't have to, put a point across. Just ask them, can you make that more clear for me? And let them stew in it. That's speaking in the positive because you already have your own opinion. And obviously, you're not going to drag them to your side. So why not help them stew in their own mental junk? You know what I'm saying? Stew in your own stuff. Go home and, chew your cud on this one. And that's for 2019. Let's give people, rather than negative energy, let's give them something they can chew their cud on. Let's find something that they agree with us on. Well, everything else but this. You want America. You don't want these people to come into the country, right? True. Tell me how. There is no argument, and because you already know the answer. And it's not being smug or snubbish or, I'm better than you. No, just sit back and let them try to figure it out for themselves. Because how else are they going to learn? They're not going to listen to us. But we can be compassionate and say, well, I pray that you are enlightened and that, nothing happens in your neighborhood, literally, but maybe something will change your mind. I hope it's not something violent, but I hope you'll change your mind. Let's pray for you changing your mind. Let's pray that something comes up and says, you know what? You know what? You know what, Joe? Yo, Joe. Hey, man. Man, I know you don't believe in this thing about the fence and all, but man, I'm going to pray that something come along, man, to change your mind. That's speaking in the positive. We can settle this in 45 minutes. Got it. So enough for this. Enough for now. iStation, good to see you. Thank you. Thank you. You can't make it up the speech, right. Thank you. Best words. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. React with purpose to bring some clarity and light to something. Absolutely supernatural. Body language. Oh, there was some interesting body language with Trump last night. I was like, oh my God, did somebody, because as a coach for people who did public speaking, the posture and where you put your hands on the podium and whether you stepped away from the podium. And there are tricks and nuances. Oh, and I say that because I went to the national competition in 1989 and I was literally like 0.7 points off of the third place presenter. But anyway, use magnet climbing boots. Absolutely. Thank you, Lori, and thank you, everybody. So enough for now. I am going to do a video on speaking in the positive and try to give more examples of that because as I have made an effort to do so in the last 2 years, especially, it has changed my life in so many ways. And those of you who've been watching can probably tell, I don't, that's one of the words. I try to use words that are positive. See, I just rephrased that right there instead of don't to put that negative thought there. Because, all we have to do is rearrange our thinking. Society has taught us to speak in the negative. When I read, Franz Kafka, when I read some of the art of, literary works 100 years ago, they start out their sentences with positive things, or they don't start start out a sentence with don't. I mean, it's like, wait a minute now, so how the writing is, but it's also in how they wish to convey it. So our writing examples have changed over the years. And and it's the internet that's made it worse. So, but if we learn how to speak in the positive and write in the positive, we will be able to manifest this much faster. And last night's speech with Donald Trump, with some of the things he said and how he did them, if I was to grade him as a public speaker and how his presentation was, I give him about a 90. There were a couple of things that were a little, but I mean, I'm taking points off for this, and this, but I give him a solid 90 without any doubt whatsoever. And even with the content of his speech and how he presented it in this way, he kept it to 10 minutes, roughly. And it's like, what? He made his point, stated his case, and got the hell out of Dodge. That's positive. He could have argued for 30 minutes and called names. He didn't. So all of that, to me, that's a forward way of thinking. That's what I wish to promote. Not necessarily Donald Trump, but let's think in the positive. If we have a negative something, well, that's crappy, that's shitty, that's this, that. Well, do you have a solution? No, I'm just going to talk about how crappy it is. Well, we all know how crap it is, but okay, explain to me, this is crap. Do you have any kind of a solution? That's what I'm really interested in. All of us are. So let's continue to share and bless each other, because we're getting out of this. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. Now, we're already in the revolution. I'm already a yellow vest. When I started speaking out on YouTube, I started the revolution right then, as is most of you, even if you're just in the chat rooms. So let's end this little session right now after an hour and 30 minutes. It was only going to be a 45-minute video. You know me, I can't keep my mouth shut, but I'm being funneled information from the higher spirits. And it's just wonderful to hang out with you folks and share this knowledge and information. And I hope you understand, this is not about me. I have been chosen as a messenger. That part is about me. But always understand, it's what I'm speaking about that is to help you achieve your higher goal. That is my purpose, to help you. I could shut up and turn off the computer and stay in my own world, but that's not what it's about. So thank you. Humbly, always prayers with my closing prayer. I pray that each one of you, your friends, your family, your relatives, and all of your relations, to accept and receive the blessings, the healing, and the knowledge from the universe. Now, I wish to say this. You need to say this out loud 3 times. I accept and receive the healing and the knowledge from the universe. I accept the healing and the knowledge from the universe. It's the number 3. And by speaking aloud, you send your vibrations out into the universe. You can think it all day long, but you need to say it at least at one point 3 times out loud during the day. It's the vibrations from the speech. So blessing everybody. Thank you, Melanie, Lori, iStation, Supernatural, and whoever else is up the lines. Blessings, everybody. Until later. Be safe. Stay warm. It's going to get cold here in South Georgia these next couple of days, but we'll handle it. Time to go out and get some firewood before it gets too late. So blessings all till later. See you then. Till next time. Hawkeye Two Feathers from South Georgia saying,